Hey everyone, it's John Wheatcroft here with another Sunday Q&A. We're up to week 23, how time flies, eh? So I hope you're doing well, and I hope you're still practicing, still making music, and that these videos are in some way inspiring you to work on new ideas and find some new sounds, and just keep focused in your playing. As I've said many times, that's one of the reasons why I do this. A lot of my practice is based around gigs, what I'm actually doing performance-wise, and as they're in short supply at the moment, this is a great way to keep focused, to keep some kind of to keep some impetus to keep working on fresh ideas, and also to keep my chops in shape, to make certain that I'm at a standard where I can perform these tunes to an acceptable level. So I'm hoping that you're enjoying them. Keep the questions coming. Still getting some really insightful and inspiring questions. And with this in mind, Charlie sent me a message this week, which is going to inspire the whole week, really. It alluded to the idea of simplicity, keeping things kind of straightforward. And I think it's important to just acknowledge that sometimes when things are simple, we don't confuse that with its worth or its value. Often the simple things are the most valuable things, certainly in terms of giving you a foundation to build upon, something that's strong and that can be relied upon, for things like playing through changes, for having melodic ideas that you can develop, and also just for giving you sort of a basis for progression. If these foundations are built upon shaky ground, then you can't really kind of take them anyplace else, So we often confuse the relative sort of complexity of an idea with its relative worth, if you like. And in my experience, it's often the opposite. The simple things seem to be the things that are often overlooked, but they're the things that will really help you out in things like improvisational situations, and just the whole kind of process of playing the guitar is based upon knowing a bunch of simple things really well. So with this in mind, we're going to look at some ideas for playing through chord changes. I'm going to show you some ways of managing scale information and so on, and we're going to finish those Django lines off. But I'm going to start off by performing one of the first jazz standards that I ever learned. It's a fantastic tune called Blue Bossa, and I'm going to try and put my money where my mouth is, as it were, and adopt that simple kind of approach in playing through the changes. I'm not going to try and rely too heavily on any fancy licks or tricks. I'm just going to let the beauty of the chord changes take me through, just by hopefully selecting nice notes off each chord and connecting them together in an interesting way. We'll see how that goes, eh? So I'm going to do my usual 3 takes, and then I'm going to pick the best, and I'll see you on the other side of the tune. Take care, see you in a moment. I hope you enjoyed that. It's such a great tune to play, Blue Bossa. It's not too hard, but I found that quite challenging, actually, to be truthful, to try and keep things so simple and not rely upon sort of some flashy tricks or whatever to keep interest up, to try and keep things sounding interesting over so many choruses. So I'm going to share some of the ideas that I used there, and just some ideas in general that are going to hopefully answer some of the questions that I've had. So I've had a number of requests to talk about things like performance anxiety and how to sort of to not let nerves get the better of you. So I'm going to share two thoughts of things that I use, and I used then, and I had them in my mind as a way of not overplaying, as a way to sort of punctuate my playing. And I got both of them from two guitar players who know a thing or two about performance, Borelli Legren and Eric Clapton. So the first thing that I noticed when watching Borelli Legren play is how relaxed his picking hand is. His picking hand is just super, super relaxed when he plays. There's never really, or at least there never appears to be, any stress or tension in his picking hand. And one of the things that I've noticed him do in between phrases is precisely what I'm doing now. So he grips the pick, holds the pick in a picking position, and then in between phrases you'll see he's so relaxed with his picking hand that he takes his thumb away from the pick and just leaves it resting on his index finger. Right? And I've found that this is a really good way to release the pressure valve, if you like. When things can get a bit tense, when you can feel yourself tensing up a bit, you tend, or I tend to anyway, to start gripping the pick a little bit too hard. All right. And then what that does is that translates into tension throughout the whole of the arm. And then the way you pick is going to sound stiff. It's also going to sort of impede any kind of flow, or kind of, it makes it difficult to play with dynamics. It also makes it really difficult to play fast. It's all bad, the tension thing is all bad. The only one technique I can think of where tension is really something that you need is that thing what Joe Satriani does, where he kind of bounces, does tapping with the side of the pick and quivers on the frets, and that needs to be tense, but you maybe do that for a second or so. So one of the things that I was doing there is, in between each phrase, you may notice me do this and take my thumb off the back of the pick. And I find it serves to do two things. One is it keeps me relaxed, centered, that's the first thing. The second thing is it serves as a form of punctuation in between the phrases. If I feel tempted to keep playing streams of notes, then this reminds me, okay, breathe. In a way, it's like the way that a trumpet player or saxophonist would breathe in between each note. So I treat that as being like the way that a wind player might breathe, and it punctuates my phrasing. So that's the first thing you might want to try when you find yourself getting a little bit sort of stressed or whatever. Even though it's just me and a camera, this idea of hitting record, suddenly you start making mistakes, or things feel a little bit tougher than they would be if you were not putting yourself under so much scrutiny. So maybe I'll give you like three things to think about here. Actually, a second thing just occurred to me. And one of the ways to deal with stress and tension when you play is to just do it a lot, to perform a lot. Now, of course, especially given circumstances that we're in at the moment, there's not that much in the way of performance opportunities, bits and pieces here and there. Yeah. So one of the things you can do to mimic that, or to kind of simulate that, is to record yourself. So I think a great thing to do is to do kind of like what I'm doing now. You don't necessarily need to broadcast it even. Just video yourself. If you've got a computer with a video camera, as I have, sit in front of the computer and play what you think you can play, and then see how well you do when the red light is on. If that's not available to you, just use your phone, your voice notes or what have you. I often find I think I've got something down, then I document it by recording it on my phone, and it takes me a few takes to get it so that I'm happy with the recording. Now, I actually think it's not what people often sell it as, red light fever and all this kind of stuff. I think what it is sometimes it's levels of scrutiny. It's how much detail, how closely in detail you listen to your playing. Because when you're practicing sometimes and you're kind of staring at the wall or looking out the window, there's a chance that you're making these little tiny small errors, but you're just not that critical of them. It's like you don't sort of care about them that much because you're not really paying attention. Yeah? But then as soon as you hit the record button and you know, okay, this is going to be preserved, even only for a matter of minutes if you then go and delete it, the very fact that it's being held up to the light means you start seeing flaws that become unacceptable that otherwise would have been acceptable. So you start concerning yourself with the small details. So if I'm playing, you know, this, then I have to think, how's that note going to end? You know, do I go up, or do I do like a little gliss there, or what? You know, how do you do that? Now, in a practice situation, you probably just let it go and just don't even think about it. Right? But then, as soon as it's being recorded, the minute, smallest detail becomes magnified. It certainly does in my mind, and I think that's the issue. It's not this idea that when you turn the record button on, suddenly you lose 10% of your ability. No, I think if anything, what happens, you refine your hearing so that something that you were doing anyway becomes unacceptable to you. Certainly for me. And you know, and usually when I reject takes and I go, I'm going to do that again, it's usually not because I'm not playing the notes right. You know, the notes are usually okay, you know. It's because there's some kind of artifact there that maybe I didn't notice and was probably already there. It was always there. You know, there's a bit of extraneous noise I don't like, or it's a bit late, or the timing's not exactly right, or the dynamics don't flow in the way I want them to flow. So you've got to get yourself used to this idea of listening to yourself that critically, and I think that's one of the things that will really help you. So if you listen to a guitar player like Wayne Krantz, I remember listening to one of the lessons he put on his website at one point, and what was clear to me is he spends half of his practice time listening to himself back. He's got an old cassette recorder, like a tape player. You know, he hits the rewind button and you can hear it rewinding. It's super low tech, a metronome and a cassette recorder I think he uses. And he spends 50% of his practice time listening back. So that way he's got a real accurate picture as to where he's at, you know. It's not going to surprise him when he hears himself on the recording because he knows what he sounds like. Now, it's one thing that, generally speaking, we might neglect in our practice routine, the sort of the checking part of how does it sound. And when you do listen back, it can be quite revealing, I think. And even if you're listening to yourself as you're playing, I think that's what makes us feel like we're making mistakes, is we start paying attention to stuff that was probably already there. So recording yourself frequently, I think, is a really good idea. You know, I do it pretty much daily. You know, when I think I've got something down, record myself playing it. You know, just on a phone. You know, I'm not bothered about the quality. I'm not going to keep it probably even. You know, but it's just getting used to hearing yourself. So I'd say this: the pick, letting go of the pick, for me serves as a pressure release. Maybe it's just that it puts it front and center in my mind as well. You know, it could be a psychological thing. If it is, I don't care so long as it works. If it works, it works, you know. Okay, so that's thing number one. Thing number two, try and get yourself used to the idea of being recorded frequently. Again, another one of the reasons why I'm doing this. It's putting me under the scrutiny of what a live performance would feel like, or even maybe it's even more scrutiny, so that when I do start playing again frequently, even though I do get the occasional gig, that, you know, I'm not going to have any problems because I haven't really played, you know, for 6 months or whatever. And then the third thing, which I got from watching Eric Clapton play, is when Clapton's finished the phrase, right, he takes his hand completely away from the guitar. Right, you should watch him play a blues. You know, he spends, you know, a quarter of the time with his arm by his side, and it's such a great idea. And when I noticed him doing that, I thought, absolutely amazing. You know, so what he's doing is he'll play a phrase. You know, so say I've mimicked this from Clapton. So if I'm playing over my like a. And take your arm away from the guitar. You know? So there is that thing, and I find I'm guilty of this. You know, guitar players were terribly guilty of noodling. I figure if I'm in a playing position, if I've got my hand there, I'm probably going to be playing. Right? It's a bit like when you see Mike Stern take a stool on stage. He takes a high stool on stage with him, so that when he wants to lay out, he sits down, because his opinion is if he's standing up and he's got a guitar around his neck, he's going to be playing it, you know. He wants to play. So he sits down on occasion and just watches the band and lays out and just doesn't play. So in a way, this is like Mike Stern sitting down. It's, you know, you kind of stand down, you know, you're not kind of ready to go. So in between phrases, I find that I've learned now to do two things. If it's a momentary thing, it's only going to be for like a beat or two, then the thumb comes off the back of the pick and that, there goes the steam. It's like taking the pressure, you know, off the kettle, if you like. Take the, or let the valve release. That's thing number one. Thing number two, make certain that I record myself loads, you know, and get used to it, you know, so that you know what you need to work on and you don't get freaked out by, like, you know, hearing an extraneous noise here or there. You know, you eliminate it. I find what happens is it focuses my practicing when I'm not recording it, because I start to develop that level of attention to detail just when I'm playing all the time. Whereas previously, I think it's possible, even playing live as well, sometimes you can let things go, you know, in a recording session you'd find unacceptable. And then the third thing is when you know you're not going to play, if you want to really put a stop, like the way that a trumpet player would move the trumpet away from his mouth or whatever, or a singer would move away from the microphone when they're not going to sing, you know, we can do the same thing. Just take your arm away from the guitar. Probably best not to, depending upon the type of guitar you're playing, to do it with the other hand, because you might get feedback or whatever if you're playing super loud or whatever. And that's one of the most difficult things about why I think maybe guitar players don't leave so much space when you're playing with overdrive, is because if you just let the strings go, they're going to feed back, you know. So sometimes it's easier to just keep playing, you know. But still, nonetheless, I think you can mute with the picking hand and let this hand fall by your side. Just check out Clapton playing a slow blues or something. And certainly for the first chorus or two, he's got his arm by his side more than he's got it on the guitar. You know, he plays a phrase, you know, down, away. And then he's back, and then he's away, and he's back. And it's such a simple, the theme of this week, it's such a simple but musically effective idea. So I urge you to try it. So that's the first thing this week. Hopefully that answers or begins to answer some of these questions about, you know, things that you can do to sort of put yourself in the best mindset for performance, you know. And I'm not suggesting that this is going to kind of change your world or anything like that, but small things, you know, accumulate. So small improvements or small differences that you can make do make a big difference over a period of time. When you add this with all the other stuff that you're using, you know, there's some great books out there about performance anxiety. I've been reading that one recently. The Pressure Principle, which is really, really good. Effortless Mastery by Kenny Werner is another fantastic one. David Buswell's book's really great. There's a whole, you know, industry of kind of like musical self-help books out there, you know, and they're all great in their own way. And I find a combination of an idea from here, an idea from there, spotting something. How do your favourite players deal with it? It could even be a postural thing, you know, which is a big deal, you know, with performance, you know, setting the posture. But small things count, so that's going to be our first point for today. Thumb off the pick, recording yourself, take your hand away when you're not playing. Here's a super simple strategy you can use for playing through chord changes. Particularly relevant when you're learning a piece for the first time, to make certain that you're okay with the harmony. I'm going to use the changes from this tune just as a teaching device really, although you could do it with anything. So let's be clear, we know what the chord changes are for this tune. So it's C minor, C minor 7, F minor, 2 bars, D half diminished, G7, then C minor again. That's the first part. Then we change key then to D flat major, so we go to E flat minor, A flat, 7, D flat major, and I know I'm playing extended chords, but they're the type of chords. Then D half diminished, G7, C minor. Okay, so I'm going to set a metronome. I'll maybe take it down a little. So set my metronome at 138. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do here is just play the root note of each chord. Okay, but I'm not going to do it in the bass. The intention is to not play a bass line. So this is so that we can hear the chord changes. So if I put it in the treble, now this might illuminate something as to how well you know the notes in the treble strings really. So all I'm going to do is play whole notes. 2, 3, 4. C, C, then it goes to F, then to D, G, D flat, D, G, C, G. Okay, that's the basic chords. And I can move that around the guitar. C, C, F, F, D, G, C, C, E flat, A flat, D flat, D flat, D, G, C, G. Okay, and move that around to wherever you can find it on the guitar. Okay, then our next step, we're going to add the third of each chord. That's what we're going to do next. Okay, so we're going to take that idea and add the third. For our next step, I'm going to add the third degree of each chord. Okay, and I might do this with some kind of a rhythm as well, so it's not just going to be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. I could go 1, 2, 3, 4. There's our F minor, D with a minor third, G with a major third, C, E flat minor, A flat 7, D flat major, let's go straight to G7. I'm just doing that to keep it one bar. I know it could be 2 chords in that bar, but just to keep things simple, we can always make a 2-5-1 into just a 5-1 if you wish. Okay, so we can put the third above. So say it's C minor for now. That's the third above. Or I can use octave displacement by putting it in the lower octave. So I can do this with all the chords. So I can go either up or down. So even with just that, right, if I decorate that with some of the sort of simple melodic lines in between, hopefully you're going to hear how my melody now is going to map out the chords. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there what I did a few times, I was playing some melody lines, and then you can flip them around. So instead of going root, third, I could go 1, 2, 1, third root. Kind of playing around a little bit with it, but that's basically just playing root and third. I think at one stage I put a 5 in as well, so that might be the next stage, you know. Sorry, I'm messing around at the end. I won't do that now. I'll keep it like rigid to root 3-5. Just like super simple exercise. And of course, you can flip them around. You could go root 3-5. It doesn't have to be root 3-5 like so. So let me try that. I'll do them just as simple as possible. Root 3-5, root 3-5, root 3-5, root 3-5. start jumbling them around. Go. So I'm deliberately not playing the backing track here, so that hopefully you can hear the chords from what I play, not from what the track is telling me. Of course, then we can add the 7. And now a great way to get the 7 in there is to just do it by itself. So we're going to go root 7. So that's going to be this. So like the rhythm I used for root and third, I went, I think if I remember rightly. Okay, so the 7 is going to be. I can go up or down. Okay, so we could then try doing root 3/7. So this is going to be, I'll put again a rhythm to it. I go. That's root 3/7. Root 3/7. And of course we can flip that around. You can go root 7/3. Yeah, so root 7/3, root. So that was I did root 7/3, root 7/3, root 7/3. Whatever, however you want to flip them around. Let's start improvising with it. So then what we're left with then is, if we take away the root, and we might have the 3 and 7, maybe I'll do some of the middle strings, C minor, F minor, T half diminished, G7, I did quite a few times there is that when I went in the tune, you see when I went from C minor to F minor, I made the C minor into a C7 because it's the 5 of F minor. So you go. So I'm hoping that these simple approaches to a tune like Blue Bossa can help you to sort of get inside the changes of any tune. Of course, you're not just going to do that. You're going to flesh that out with other ideas. So, if I play, I'll play something now, like I'll sort of take those ideas and play them in a melodic way, maybe with the metronome. I'm going to keep it real simple. 1, 2, 1, 2. the chord changes there, but in a clear way where it's really defined and there's room to, there's nothing flashy there, just melodies, melodic ideas that are hitting all the chord tones, hopefully in the right places, and you can hear the harmony. I'm leaving some space here and there, and then I can build from that. That's some way I can build, as opposed to just playing jazzy licks but not really necessarily know whether it's hitting the right points of the chord. So this is something I do at every tune, if I want to play giant steps or something. If I can't go root third, root third, root third, and so on, root third, 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 root third. If I can't do that, why am I trying to do something more complex? I need to start with that to really make sure that I'm inside the tune. I would say at first as well, if you can, avoid the bass strings, right? Because what we're not trying to do, we're not trying to go... Well, maybe you are, I don't know. It ends up sounding kind of like a bass line. There's nothing wrong with that, of course. There's an argument as well to be said for playing streams of notes, although you've got to be careful that you don't end up doing that when you play. So the reason mainly why I'm saying keep it away from the bass, because obviously that's got to function as well, is more so to check to make sure that you're okay. Like, do you know where these intervals are? If I said, could you play, there's an F minor, there's our F, do you know where the minor third is when it's below the chord? Do we know it's there? There's the minor third below it, or there's the perfect fifth, or there's the fifth above. Where's the 6th degree and so on, there, the flat 7 is there, or it's here, or the major 7 is there, what have you. Because what this will allow us to do is play through a tune and be able to position any interval against any chord. So of course we can do the root against every chord, you could do the 3rd, or the 5th, or the 7th, or maybe even the more exotic intervals like the 9, so here's those changes with the 9. C minor with the 9, and F minor with the 9, half diminished with a 9, and then maybe a dominant 7 with a flat 9, back to a 9, and then a 9 on these, to a 9. It's like a new melody if you like, or the 11. This one you maybe sharp 11, sharp 11, never the with a 13. Pick that out as a melody note if I wished, Now in the half diminished you can get this chord, which is a minor 7 flat 5, but with the flat 13 on the top. Now for the dominant chord here, you use a flat 13. So not a natural 13. Generally that says it wants to go to major. And then 13 on top of every chord. Now, of course, you'd find ways to voice lead this, but if you've got the potential to drop any note on any chord, then that's really powerful. That means you can hear the sound of each of the available chord tones being played against each of the available harmonic events. So that's what I'm suggesting. So you don't necessarily need to play these as chords, just so long as I can hear. That's what the 9 sounds like against that C minor. Of the F. So you could begin to hear that. So there kind of is an exception that I did play the natural 13 against the minor. With half whole, if you play these kind of phrases, these phrases that are not so linear, if you play linear phrases, they tend to have a kind of natural tendency to fall in a certain place. So if I play that, feels like it's going to land on that major third, but if I go, that doesn't feel like it's got that same natural tendency to go. That could easily go and land on a minor third. So chord tones are the order of the day, so that's our next thing for today. Based around Charlie's suggestion for simplification, the next subject is going to be a recap of some of the material we looked at last time, looking at moving through various dominant scales by just changing one note. So I'm going to call this section scale morphing, and we're going to look at it in a couple of different ways. And basically what the principle is when moving from one sound to another, we often think about and concentrate ourselves on the differences between them rather than the similarities. So rather like learning a new language, if you approach it, or a new style, if you approach it by saying what's completely different or alien or foreign between this and this, then it might be overwhelming, as opposed to saying what's the commonality between this thing and this thing. You know, if I want to learn to play jazz but I play blues, how much can I already just transfer across, you know? And the answer to that would be quite a lot, which is really inspiring, and it builds your confidence because you already know a lot of stuff. So, you know, let's work on the principle of the fact that I'm hoping that at this stage we're familiar with the major scale. Okay, so the major scale, of course, is those 7 notes: do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Okay. Now, if we know these notes really well, we know that's the root, that's the second, that's the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, and the octave. Then I'm hoping that we can find some other scales and other sounds just by changing one note. So the first one that we might change is we might decide we want a brighter sound, the kind of sound that you'd use against those raised 4 chords. So that type of sound, that's a major 9, but in this case with an F sharp on the top. So what we associate with the scale we call Lydian mode. And what that is, it's everything the same, everything exactly the same as the major scale, with the exception of the F becomes an F sharp. And consequently, because of that, that F sharp can be used against the chord to create a colourful extension, whereas the F tends to sound like a tension that needs to be resolved. It's a nice sound, but you wouldn't really think that would be closed, whereas that feels like we could rest at that point, whereas this needs to really fall. And generally that's a kind of a rule. Anything that you find a semitone above a chord tone usually wants to resolve downwards. So that's why, you know, if you play a major third against a minor chord, why it would sound kind of tense. So if you play the sharp 5 against the major chord, it wants to fall. The flat second wants to fall, so on. Okay, so the perfect fourth against the major chord wants to fall, you know, because it wants to sort of fights for dominance, really. If it's a tone away, it's not so bad. So that's the Lydian mode, just one note difference. Now, if you're familiar with and savvy with things like your modes of the melodic minor scale, you may know that there's a scale called the Lydian augmented. So all you need to do to make Lydian augmented is augment the fifth. So you take, and we go, and that's the third mode of the melodic minor scale, and that's used against major 7 sharp 5 chords, these beautiful sounding things. If you're familiar with that, if you know those sounds, that's a good way to work into it. So we can go this Lydian with the raised 4, and there's Lydian augmented with the same thing with the raised 5, or you can go back to Lydian. And if you know your harmonic minor scale, there's a scale there called Lydian sharp 2. Which is the 6th degree, that's actually E harmonic minor. And you get this beautiful chord, major major 7, sharp 9 if you want, you know, sharp 4 if you like. Beautiful, yeah. But it's only one step away. It's not so alien and foreign as you might think. You know, it's only one note away. So this is what I'm talking about here: scale transformations, right? Now, if we just deal with the major scale for now, the things you find in the major scale. Of course, if you lower the 7, you get that kind of bluesy Lucille and all that kind of stuff, you know. The Mixolydian mode. It's a major scale with a flat 7. But once again, you know, if you're familiar, if you're savvy with your other potential sounds, if you know what the other potential sounds are, you can make that become other things, you know. So you can take that Mixolydian and raise the 4. This kind of like sound. And that's coming from the melodic minor scale. Again, just one note difference. Or you can flatten the 6th. Look at this sound. Stevie Wonder. Again, that's melodic minor scale. That's F melodic minor scale now in this instance, 5th mode, as opposed to the other one, which was the 4th mode, which was G melodic minor scale. So there's breakouts for any one of these. But say we just do this from the major scale. There's a way that you can, you can put them in order of light to dark. So that the 3 major modes. Lydian's the only one that's got any sharps. It's got a sharp 4. Okay. So if you do away with that sharp 4, you then get the major scale. Okay. If you flatten the 7, you get Mixolydian. Now, okay, there's all these breakouts. You know, you can go from each of these into harmonic minor. You can go from each of these into melodic minor. But maybe we'll worry about that on a different day. But just acknowledge the fact that that's plausible. We can do that. Okay, the common denominator between all 3 of those is the major pentatonic. Because the notes that we changed is what type of 4 does it have? Does it have a sharp 4? Does it have a regular 4? Well, pentatonic doesn't have a 4. Misses it out. Likewise, we said major scale had a major 7, and Mixolydian had a flat 7. Pentatonic has no 7, doesn't have a 7. So that's a good common tonality between all 3. So if you start with pentatonic and just add whichever ones you want, you know, raise 4, major 7, Lydian mode, back to pentatonic, regular 4, major 7, major scale, back to pentatonic, add the regular 4 and the flat 7. Okay, and then we're into the Mixolydian. Again, you could add the sharp 4 and the flat 7, and we're in Lydian flat 7. The only one it won't work with that we've seen so far is the Mixolydian flat 6. You know, this thing, because the flat 6 is conflicts with the 6 in pentatonic. So now, so if we take this Mixolydian, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, and we lower the 3rd. I know that scale is Dorian mode. Of course, flattening the 3rd puts it into the minor world. Yeah, that's the Dorian mode. So just one note away. In fact, if you did that for major scale and flatten the 3rd, we have the melodic minor scale, minus 7, minor major 7 or minus 6. So again, that's just one note away. So another way of seeing melodic minor, and the way that I like to see it, is like Dorian, major 7. Because that's where it's more likely to be used as in conjunction with Dorian, rather than, you're probably not going to get to it too often from major scale. There are some other exceptions. Whilst we're on the subject of major scale with one note removed, you could see if you raise the 5 on major scale, that gives you a harmonic minor scale, like the relative minor with a major 7. Or if you flatten the 6th, got this scale called the harmonic major scale, which is got all this kind of stuff going on. These kind of beautiful sounds. Harmonic major scale, and that's something we could look at some point. It's got some cool stuff going on there. It's got a minor 2-5-1, what you think is a minor 2-5-1, going to a major, deceptive cadence in there. It's really nice. It's only one note difference. That's all there is. There's only one note difference. So I'm hoping that the point of this is the transformational power of just changing one note. Okay. So far we've had Lydian. So we're going to put it through the 7 modes of the major scale. But I'm hoping by now that you can see that if those other scales, those 3 other scales that I've mentioned so far today, the harmonic minor, the melodic minor, and the harmonic major, they can all be seen as the major scale with one note changed. So melodic minor is the major scale with a minor 3rd. Everything else the same. I'm talking about the jazz melodic minor scale here, the expression coined by Berkeley, the one that goes up and down the same way. The harmonic minor scale can be seen like kind of from the perspective of the relative minor, A minor with a major 7, or from C major with a sharp 5. That's one way of looking at harmonic minor scale. It's like C major with a raised 5, which makes it A minor, relative minor with a major 7. So maybe that's a bit more of a 2-step approach, but just to show you there's only one note difference between those sounds. So that means all the various modes that come from it, they're only one note difference as well. So if you took the time and trouble, you'd see that this is the major scale with the raised 5. So that means the next mode would be the Dorian mode with the raised 4. And the next mode would be the Phrygian mode with the raised 3. What's coming next? Lydian raised 2. Yeah, we saw that one before. Yeah. See, so if you see that they're only one note away, then everything's one note away. Everything. So if that melodic minor scale starts with the major scale with a flat 3, the next one is going to be like the Dorian mode with a flat 2. Yeah. Okay, we come across a bit of a sticky wicket with flat roots when the root gets flattened, which is one of the reasons why it's good to see some of these scales from 2 perspectives. So I see melodic minor as like a Dorian with a raised 7, and I see it like a major scale with a flat 3, because that's helpful if I don't want to have a scale with a flat root, and I can borrow the name from the other pathway, if that makes sense. But anyway, keeping things simple. I don't want to get too far removed with this. These other things, these other scales, we can look at them on another day. So the major scale with a flat 6 is the harmonic major, just to round that off. And that's kind of one beloved by players like Alan Holdsworth and those kind of guys, but I don't think he sees it from the perspective of the C, actually. But anyway, I digress. Okay, so in the major scale, the way we can order the 7 modes by only changing them one note at a time, and this is why this is great to practice, right? That's why this is really good to practice. Start with Lydian, because that's the only one that's got a sharp note, sharp 4. Remove that sharp 4, put a natural 4. I'm doing that by playing an F chord, going to a C, and then we play major scale, and then we're going to flatten the 7th, and I'm going to do this by playing a B flat over C. Let's mix a Lydian, only one note difference. Okay. Then I'm going to change now by playing an E flat over C. So if I do that kind of, it's an E, what you might know, of course, as a C minor 7, and that makes it C Dorian. C Dorian. Then if I play an A flat over C, lower the 6th of what you've got here, and you get Aeolian, yeah. And then if I lower the 2, Phrygian mode, yeah? And then if I lower the 5, that's the Locrian mode, and that's all of them. That's all of the available sounds. And we can do this all with one triad in actual fact. So to spell Lydian, I'll maybe play D over C. You play your Lydian over that. So play your Lydian over this. And then and I'm going to make it so you can't play Lydian. So now you have to play the major scale. Now I'm going to make it so you can't play the major scale. By playing a B flat, you've got to play Mixolydian now. Okay, then I'll make it so that you've got to now put the flat third in, play Dorian. Now you're playing Dorian, yeah? Okay. Then I'm going to make it so that you have to play Aeolian. I'm playing an A flat over C, so that's Aeolian now. Now I'm going to make it so you've got to play Phrygian by flattening the 2. By playing a D flat. And then finally I'm going to make it so that you've got to play the flat 5. So in a minute you can practice all the scales. Lydian, major scale, Mixolydian, Dorian, and then the next one's Aeolian, yeah. And the next one is the Phrygian, D flat. And then the next one is Locrian. Of course, remember that each one of those 7 have got breakouts. By changing the one note, we can get ourselves into melodic minor, we can get ourselves into harmonic minor, and so on. But maybe more of that as we progress. But for this week, those 7, you find a lot of information about this in that book called The Advancing Guitarist by Mick Goodrick. Can't recommend that strongly enough. It's a really great book. So that's our next topic, scale morphing. Where does the time go? I hope that you'll allow me to complete our study of 10 Django licks next time. Fortunately, I've run out of time for today. I've got another recording to do. So things are getting busy, which is really cool. I hope you got something from today. As I say, I wanted to keep things fairly simple and straightforward. Although the implications, as you can see, from some of these simple ideas are far-reaching. They start off being simple, but as they accumulate, or as you start running 2 or 3 things at one, you know, if you follow the logic through and say, okay, well, if it works for this, it could work for something else. Things begin to stack up pretty quickly. So for today, stick with the major scale. But then, you know, if you're familiar with these harmonic minor, melodic minor, harmonic major, if you know what these sounds are, see how they relate. You know, how do you get into them from the major scale? You know, if you raise the 4, then you're into Lydian mode. But if you sharp the 2, then you're into harmonic minor scale. If you raise the 5, you're into melodic minor, and so on and on it goes. Just by changing one note. So that's what we're after, trying to find those connections by changing one note. I'm hoping that chord tone thing was useful, and hopefully some of those ideas about dealing with performance anxiety or pacing or whatever, use of space, whatever you want to call it, you know. I find that it's really good to just put those thoughts in my mind at the start of a performance. There's an argument to be said as well that if you've got something that's productive, if you can focus on something that's productive, then it stops you from thinking about negative things, because you can't really say don't think about negative things. All you can do is distract yourself by thinking about positive things instead, really. And then if you're too busy thinking about, oh, play some beautiful notes or leave some space, you can't be thinking about, like, don't mess up or don't play a bum note or whatever. You know, because as soon as you start thinking about those things, you're almost guaranteed to do it. So anyway, I'm hoping that there's plenty for you to get stuck into. Requests for tunes, that'd be great. You know, I'm doing these things every week. I'm running out of tunes. You know, there's only so many millions of tunes left for me to play. No, I'm only kidding. I'm definitely not running out of tunes. But it's good to know, you know, if there's anything that you want to hear, or you think that I might be able to do justice, then please just send me some suggestions and I'll pile them on the list. You know, as always, I hope you have an inspired week of practice and lockdown's not getting you down too much, and that you're keeping busy. Please send any questions, suggestions, you know, whatever, you know, thoughts. Just say hello if you want. You know, it's all great. It all helps. Any shares as well, or tell any people that you think might be interested in this, to spread the word. It seems to be consistently doing well, and so long as you guys are interested in hearing this stuff, I'm more than happy to keep doing them. Have a great week, take care of yourself, and I will see you next week with yet more fun guitar stuff. Take care.